Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 27, to be perfectly precise. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at joeblow.com. This is Infamous, and right here at Just the Worst Podcast. And as we do every single week, we talk movies. What's the latest stuff, the latest information, the latest news coming out of Hollywood, and then opine about it. Try and put it into some perspective for you, let you know why it matters, why it's important, and maybe also give you a mindset that you haven't really considered before to sort of round out the conversation. Basically, I sit here and I talk to you. And wherever you're listening, whether it's on your phone, your tablet, your radio, however it is that you got us hooked up, in many cases, you'll probably talk back to me. Only one of us can hear the other. Actually, that's not true. None of us can hear the other. But it still feels like you're having a conversation with a good friend. So in that way, we're respectful, and we bring a lot of different ideas to the table. And that's the way that the show works. So, look, a lot of stuff to discuss this week. And a couple of pretty big things, including one major item that a lot of people weren't really ready to sort of see opened up. And we're going to jump right into that right now as we sort of examine what's going on over at Disney and Lucasfilm as it pertains to Indiana Jones. This past week, big news dropped that Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford are going to be teaming up once again to do another Indiana Jones film. An Indiana Jones 5, so to speak. Although I'm sure it'll just be Indiana Jones and insert archaeological find here. And that will add to the franchise, to the series, the beloved series of Indiana Jones. The date has already been set, July 19th, 2019, with Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall producing. Now, in the announcement, released by Lucasfilm and Disney, there is not one mention, not one, not even a little nod. Not even a little, hey, over here, pay attention over here. Nothing in regards to George Lucas. So for anyone who looks at a fifth Indiana Jones adventure and asks, is George Lucas involved? The answer, very clearly, no. Absolutely not. Nowhere near it, nowhere close to it, nowhere around it, nowhere involved. There is no George Lucas. Let me repeat that again. No George Lucas involved in the fifth Indiana Jones. Now, that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. While we always associate Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford with Indiana Jones, George Lucas is really one of the greatest figures in the lore of Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones was and always will essentially be George Lucas's baby. You know, Steven Spielberg was on board and he found it an interesting concept, and as a result he directed it, and Harrison Ford was the guy they found for it and stayed true with it all the way through. But George Lucas was really the captain that sort of steered the Indiana Jones ship in a number of ways. Now, Lucas and Spielberg had a very collaborative relationship going into each Indiana Jones film. And as you recall, heading into Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the situation was really Ford and Spielberg and Lucas all wanted to do the film. However, they weren't going to do something until they were all happy with what they had come up with what was put on the table. And one of the driving forces of what was put on the table was George Lucas. Essentially, it was his responsibility in a number of ways to come up with and determine the MacGuffin that would be at the center of that particular Indiana Jones film. Now, you can look at Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and say, well, that was awful, and as a result, I'm just going to blame it on George Lucas. Now, look, it's not unreasonable because of the fact that it's very easy to look at anything that George Lucas has been associated with over the last however many years and say they've ultimately turned into utter garbage. Whether it's the Star Wars prequels, whether it was Red Tails, whether it was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, whether it was that god-awful animated film that looked like all of the worst parts of the Star Wars prequels rolled up into one movie for children. It's easy to say George Lucas he lost it. He lost it a long time ago, and he's not getting it back. So fine. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we put that out there. That George Lucas is heavily responsible for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and even though he was a key figure in getting Indiana Jones to the beloved stature that we all hold him to be, we bid him farewell. Thank you for what you did in the past. Now it's on to the next thing. That's fine. That's fine. But here's the but. Here's the part that we really gotta look at then. Is even with that said, that doesn't mean there's any guarantee that a fifth Indiana Jones film will be sensational or spectacular or fantastic or great just because it exists. They're still going to put the work in. They're still going to make it work. They're still going to crack an idea that people look at and they say, yep, that belongs with Indiana Jones, and then have an Indiana Jones film around that's good. That amounts to a good film. Harrison Ford, is no spring chicken. He's not getting any younger. That's for sure. Because that's not the way time works. He's not Benjamin Button. But you look at some of what Harrison Ford has done in the last few years, whether it's Ender's Game, or I would even say his part in 42, or of course Star Wars The Force Awakens, and it feels once again like he gives a shit. Like he cares. Like he's trying for a long time, far, far, far too long, given how good Harrison Ford could be in the past. For far too long, Harrison Ford just sort of coasted on the name of Harrison Ford. And his performances were rather lazy, I'll say. It was a lot of just kind of grumbling like this with pointing. Or there was a lot of yelling. But not too much in between. Not a lot of nuance. There's pretty much one way or the other. Not a lot in the middle. And so as a result, what did we wind up with? Hollywood Homicide. I think I just blacked everything out after that. I mean, it was all very bad. But in recent years, he seems like he's got a little bit back to what he used to do really well. Ender's Game, I thought he was really solid in. Came back to Han Solo for Star Wars The Force Awakens in a way that felt consistent with Han Solo. I mean, even Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, you can't say he wasn't Indiana Jones there. It was just a bad film around him. You know, that was a film where Indiana Jones, especially in the end, didn't actually do anything. Just kind of stood around and let the alien shit take place around him. Not very exciting. And Karen Allen was sort of brought back because of the chemistry that they had going back to Raiders of the Lost Ark that Indy was never really quite able to recapture with any of the other female leads in either Temple of Doom or The Last Crusade. But as a result, they were just sort of leaning again. Just sort of leaning on what had worked in the past. You know, and then of course you have Shia LaBeouf as Mutt, who I believe we will be disregarding moving forward. And I don't know that you really need to tell... I don't know that you really need me to tell you about the monkey swinging scene again. And so we have a fifth Indiana Jones adventure on tap. What does that mean? What does that mean for us? Well, for one, there is much less time between Crystal Skull in this film. It'll only be 11 years between times of release than there was between Last Crusade and Crystal Skull, which was 19 years. So, I guess we call that progress? I don't know. But what I'm hearing, at least early on, is that the plan is to tell a story that comes before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Because now, once again, you don't have to go back to leaning on Karen Allen as Marion Ravenwood. And you also can completely disregard anything you did with Shia. And have Indiana Jones by himself again. Now look, even 11 years ago, in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones was getting up there in age. At that point, I believe he was in his late 60s. By the time we get to Indiana Jones 5, or whatever they're going to call this, it'll be in his late 70s. Once you're up there, it's not a lot of difference. So he's still going to be sort of the grizzled veteran Indiana Jones. So the appearance of Harrison Ford, you know, it'll still work. If you're telling something with him later, I guess, you know, towards the 50s and 60s. I believe King of Crystal Skull took place in the 50s, so... You know, are there going to be Nazis again? I don't know. I feel like there should be. I mean, it's just one of those things where, like... I know when we've talked about, you know, Atlantis as possibly a MacGuffin. There's a number of different ones that you could possibly use. But I feel like one of the staples of an Indiana Jones film is just Indiana Jones fighting Nazis. I don't know that that's really leaning on anything. It's just Indiana Jones and Nazis kind of just... They go together. Like Ramalama Badingity-Dingadong. Together forever. Like Shoo-Up, Shoo-Wana-Wana, Yippity-Boom-Padoom. Chang-Chang. Changity-Chang-Shibop. That's the way it should be. Wow. Yeah. So I don't know where they're going to go with Indiana Jones 5. But look, Ford and Spielberg are getting ready for this thing. My understanding is that Spielberg is looking to be ready to go and shoot this thing as soon as he's done finishing Ready Player One. So he's finishing up the BFG, moves on to go Ready Player One, and then he's right into Indiana Jones 5. Which also means they must be getting close, or at least moving forward progressively, with a script and a story idea that they are happy with. Or else they wouldn't be pulling the trigger on this thing. While you could look at Star Wars The Force Awakens and say, well, they managed to pull a lot of that together in post. I don't know that Indiana Jones needed to go forward with another entry unless it was an absolute. Unless it was looking really good for them to make it happen. And so now it is. July 19th, 2019. Mark it on the calendar and get it ready. Because it's happening. Indiana Jones 5 is happening. Am I excited? I think so. I think so. I mean, how could you not? How could you not be excited about Indiana Jones 5? Now, look, I realize Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was disappointing and didn't work out in any way, shape, or form close to what anybody wanted it to possibly be. But, with that said, Indiana Jones 5 affords the opportunity to Ford and Spielberg to erase that nasty taste from your mouth and sort of send Indiana Jones off into the sunset riding a high note. If they can pull this off. In addition, let's go back and look at the other Indiana Jones films. There are 4 in total, if we want to legitimately count Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But prior to that film, there are 3 really solid films there for you that vary in degree of excellence. Raiders of the Lost Ark, no doubt, is an incredible film, an all-timer. That's a classic right there. Our first introduction to Indiana Jones, that one is stellar. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, I think, is the film out of the first 3 that is the most problematic for people. Number 1, I think the prequel nature of it taking place before Raiders of the Lost Ark throws some people. And let's remember, that took place at a time prior to prequels really being a thing. So as a result, when you look back at how people initially consumed that film, I think it sort of throws them off a little bit. And let's face it, it's a darker film. Spielberg himself has acknowledged that he's not that crazy about that film. He was in a really dark place in his life at that point, and as a result, you get a darker Indiana Jones film. But there is some really cool stuff. Everything that happens in the palace is disgustingly amazing. Whether it's the snakes or the monkey brains, ugh, or the bugs, ugh, it's all so gross, but also kind of cool. And there's the great minecart chase sequence in the caverns, in the tunnels. Also amazing. So there is some cool stuff in there. And then, of course, you go to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Sean Connery as Indy's dad. I mean, that's just a cool setup. Connery is really good in that role, by the way. It just injects a really, really fun element And once again, Nazis. And on top of that, add in the idea of trying to find the cup of Christ that would give everlasting life. And once again, you have a solid MacGuffin there to make it work. So you have, once again, three. And look, Indiana Jones and Last Crusade is better, I think, than Temple of Doom, but not nearly as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark. And as a result, you still have three really good films. And then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull happens. But 3 out of 4, you're still batting 750. There's some Major League Baseball players that would kill for that kind of average at the plate. Three out of 4 is actually a better average for the Indiana Jones franchise than what the Jurassic Park franchise was bad. They got 2 out of 4. And that's only if you're a fan of Jurassic World. Otherwise, you just look at Jurassic Park and then, The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, So once again, I'm confident, I'm excited about a 5th Indiana Jones because 3 out of the 4 that they've given me right now have been pretty good. And I've enjoyed them immensely. And I would go back and rewatch any one of those, with the exception of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So if they, with Indiana Jones 5, can give me something that's even close to being on par with those first 3, I'm perfectly okay with it. And here is also where I would warn you. Don't put unreasonable expectations on Indiana Jones 5. This is what fandom tends to do. They look at these films and they get too excited. They put too much emphasis on them. The bar for expectations is amazing, right out of the gate. They're always like, oh, this movie's got to be amazing. And if it falls short of it, they just go, oh, what a piece of shit that was. Don't do that. Look at Indiana Jones 5 right now and say, I just hope it is as good, if not slightly better, than at least the Temple of Doom. I think if you can get into that area right there, you'll be in all right shape. And anything beyond that is bonus. So, be better than Crystal Skull, be as good or if not slightly better than Temple of Doom, and now we're talking a language that I can completely understand. Those are the expectations you should be putting on an Indiana Jones film, is just be as good, if not better, than Temple of Doom. If you can get beyond that, awesome. But let's just use that as the starting point, and we'll see where we go from there. Okay? Other big news this week, though, surrounding Harrison Ford, sort of, is a short list seems to be coming together of contenders for the young Han Solo film that Phil Lord and Chris Miller are doing over at Disney and Lucasfilm as part of the expansion of the Star Wars universe. These Star Wars stories, these standalones, these spin-offs, whatever it is that you want to call them, they have one that's going to be focusing on the origins of Han Solo. Well, guess what? They can't use Harrison Ford for that. He's too old. He can't get away with playing young Han Solo anymore. And spoiler alert, after Star Wars The Force Awakens, really going to have a tough time getting away with playing Han Solo at all. Just saying. So as a result, they got to recast. They got to go out and they got to find someone else to jump into this galaxy and be Han Solo. Now, here's the difficult part of doing that, is that you don't want somebody who's just going to try and be Harrison Ford. But at the same time, you need to find someone who fans will accept as consistent with the Han Solo they've already seen. It's real tricky. Now look, you have Lord Miller in this, so right there you at least are a leg up because these guys just get it. They just tell stories really well. And on top of that, they have made a living on making the impossible possible. To Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, a book that is extremely difficult to turn into a feature film, and they turned it into a feature film for children that was really good. You look at the Lego Movie, which on paper looks destined for failure. You know, what did they do? Turned out something really good. At every turn, they have managed to defy expectations. All you have to do is even look at the 21 Jump Street films, where they took that concept and turned it into a comedy, and they turned out to be pretty good. I prefer 22 Jump Street to 21 Jump Street, but that's my own preference. But either way, they got to go back to the drawing board with Disney, with Lucasfilm, and find somebody that makes for a new, young Han Solo that everybody is happy with, that they can use to install into the Star Wars canon for a Han Solo backstory. So there have been a number of names that have started to cycle about as the list becomes thinner. They're starting to get rid of the extras. They're starting to narrow it down. We're getting to the nitty-gritty, which means they're getting closer. Now, some of the names that are being cycled about are Jack Rayner, who you may remember from Transformers Age of Extinction, Taron Egerton, who is excellent in both Eddie the Eagle and Kingsman Secret Service, Alden Ehrenreich, who's an absolute scene stealer in the Coen Brothers' Hail Caesar. I hear Miles Teller's name is still involved in the conversation. I hear Dave Franco's name is still there involved in the conversation. A wide casting search was cast to try and find the right person. Last week, a number of actors were brought into London to test for the role. They're getting closer. They're trying to figure it out. And you know what? I don't really have a prediction on who it's going to be, because I don't want that kind of weight on my shoulders. This is why somebody else gets paid the big bucks, and not me. I don't want the job of trying to replace Harrison Ford as Han Solo in your mind. He was Han Solo for 4 movies. One of his most iconic roles. Owns Han Solo. And now you're asking somebody else to jump right into that and not be compared to what Ford has done with that role over 4 films? Oof. I do not envy that individual. Not one bit. Now, I don't really have an inkling onto who it might be, who they might be leaning towards. I know lots of fans are rallying behind Taron Egerton because, look, let's face it, he was in Kingsman Secret Service, he was in Eddie the Eagle and really good in it, and as a result, you look at 2 films, you look at 2 performances that he's excellent in, and you say, well, clearly that should be the guy. But remember, it's how it works here, in this universe. And once again, being somebody that's close to what Harrison Ford did as Han Solo, but not too close. There's got to be enough distance for him to be able to sort of do his own thing, considering this would be prior to A New Hope. But at the same time, somebody who feels like if they were in A New Hope as Han Solo, it would be a seamless transition. That's a tough one. And I wish them all the best of luck in finding the right choice. Because with the way that the Star Wars fans operate, especially now with renewed enthusiasm, after The Force Awakens, if you pick the wrong guy, you mean deep shit. So good luck to you on that one. Alright, one other thing I want to talk about, and then I'm going to get into just a couple of thoughts on a couple other matters. The Crow remake has now lost another director. Corin Hardy has now departed from the Crow remake / reboot that Relativity has absolutely insistent that they're going to make. Now, this is like the fourth or fifth filmmaker that has parted ways from the Crow reboot. And with Relativity going through all of its bankruptcy issues at the end of last year, actually through most of last year and into the end of last year, now it seems to have been sorted out. Dan Brunetti is now in charge of creative at Relativity. So even though Corin Hardy has kind of stuck with the Crow film through all of the Relativity troubles, Dan Brunetti now at this point, with such a priority being placed on rebooting The Crow, is going to have a chance to put his own fingerprints on that project and not necessarily inherit what was done before him by Relativity, which, let's face it, was a fucking train wreck for much of its existence. Now, does that all of a sudden make the Crow remake, reboot a good idea? I don't know. I mean, going back to the batting average, there are a number of Crow sequels that followed in the footsteps of Alex Proyas' Crow film. The Brandon Lee Crow film. The Crow film that most people always point to and love because it's really fucking good. It's really 90s. Like, it's so 90s. It's, like, almost sickening. Then I don't know that you could do another film like that without really changing it a great deal. Just for time's sake. Like, it's a different world out there now than it was then. So you gotta do something a little bit different. Actually, you gotta do something probably a lot different. And Brandon Lee was so good in that role that once again, you now have to find another character that isn't Eric Draven as played by Brandon Lee. You need to find something else. That's the problem a lot of times with these remakes / reboots, is they try to do the exact same thing as the original, except guess what? The original is just better. It's always going to be just better. So rather than try to be a lesser version of the original, just try to be a better version of your own thing. That would make the most sense. Now look, when a film like this goes through this many changes, this many stars dropping out, this many directors switching over, it's really a recipe for disaster. If the project as currently constituted was so good right out of the gate, then they would have already made it. It wouldn't be going through all of these different periods of transition as they try to get it right. It would have been just right in the beginning. So I don't have a lot of confidence in whatever this Crow is going to be. That it is necessary, that it's a good idea, that anybody wants to see it, or that anybody really wants it made outside of the forces at Relativity who own the rights. Sometimes it's best to just say, well, we tried, and cut your losses. They just don't know that this is going to work the way that they want it to work. I don't know it's going to make money the way they hope that it makes money. It just feels like another failure on the plate of Relativity when all is said and done. Alright, I want to go back to something we talked about on last week's show, which is Spider-Man appearing in the most recent trailer for Captain America Civil War. I know when we did last week's show, recording it, very much a knee-jerk reaction to what I had seen in the trailer, and as a result, didn't really have the opportunity to talk with sort of an emotional detachment from what I had seen and figure out how everything came together. Now, in the moment, I was excited about it because it was Spider-Man. Even as somebody who had said, I wish that I didn't have any Spider-Man, that it would have been held back as a surprise until the featured film. But now, sort of a week later, having been given some room to breathe and look at this again and sort of digest it some, I think I'm still arriving in the same place, which is that I'm okay. I'm alright with Spider-Man sort of showing up at the tail end of the trailer for Captain America Civil War. I'm still excited about it. And I'm not bothered by it. I think it was a really cool moment that Marvel Studios nailed. And here's why. Here's what I'm going to tell you. All of the stuff, all of the other interactions or elements of Spider-Man perhaps showing up in Captain America Civil War have still been preserved. They're still in the film. And they're still unseen by your eyes. But what Marvel managed to do is cut a really good trailer that got you excited about Captain America Civil War to begin with, and then at the very end, after they've already built this incredibly delicious looking sundae, boop, it just dropped the cherry right on top. Right there. Just boom, right there, right on top of your whipped cream. Doing nice, plump, fat, juicy looking cherry for you to look at and say, oh man, I got a cherry, and get excited about. That's what they wanted to do, and that's what they accomplished. Because you didn't run around after that being like, oh well fuck, now we got Spider-Man. You got to see him, son of a bitch. No, that's not how it worked. Instead, you looked at it, it happened, and you got all excited and giddy, and you were like, oh man, it's Spider-Man! And you got all excited about it. All jazzed up. Enthusiasm just racing through your body. And that's what Marvel wanted to do, and they accomplished it. They gave you a little bit of a tease to get you super psyched for their movie. And that's it. They whet your appetite. They teased you. They gave you a nice little tickle there. It left you saying, oh God, I want so much more of this. In May, you're going to get it. So, while heading in, I would have liked them to save Spider-Man. I'm perfectly fine. Perfectly happy with the little tiny itty bitty snippet that I got. And it got me excited. It got me psyched. And now we move towards Civil War in May. With Spider-Man! See? It was easy to just sort of focus on it, like Captain America Civil War was coming and being like, oh man, Civil War looks awesome. And Spider-Man was sort of out of sight, out of mind. But here, you get to be like, oh, Captain America Civil War looks really good. And it's on Spider-Man! And that's what they wanted to do for you. And that's where we're at. And that's why Marvel is A+. Top of their game all the time. So brilliant. Nice one. Good job. Then again, should we really expect otherwise from Marvel when it comes to these projects? I don't think so. Alright, I want to touch upon one more thing before I send you on your way. And that is, I want to put something in perspective for you heading into the next week. Heading into next show. Heading into Just the Worst Podcast number 28. By this point in time, next week, I will have had a moment to see Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. By this point, next week, I will have a video review up on the This Is Infamous YouTube channel for Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. By this point, next week, I will have in the can a movie review podcast discussing Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And you will be on the doorstep of seeing that film. We're almost there. This is the home stretch. You're so close. So here's what I would advise for you to do. Please. For your benefit, mine, and everyone else around us. Number one, don't watch anymore. Don't watch any more trailers. Don't watch any more TV spots. Don't watch any featurettes. Just be ready to go into the film as you stand right now. As fresh or as spoiled or whatever, somewhere in between as you are right now. Let it be just that. Number two, when you go in to see the film, hope that it's good. Don't hope that it's great. Don't hope that it's amazing. Don't put the entire weight of the DC Cinematic Universe on the shoulders of one film. Just go in and say, I hope that the 2.5 hours that I spend watching this film are worth it. That I got my money's worth. That I get something out of it. That's it. And from there, you'll find that you either really enjoy the film or you don't. But you're not placing any unrealistic expectations on a film before you even sit down to watch it, and then demanding that it prove you right. Number three, and this to me is the most important one. Everyone is going to see this film and come up with their own opinions of it. There are going to be some people that go in and really like it. There may be some people who go in and love it. There are going to be people who go in and are okay with it. And there are also going to be people who go in who don't like it or who hate it. And guess what? That's okay. It's okay for people to watch this film and not like it. There's no party geek line that they have to follow. There's no groupthink that they have to subscribe to. There is no mob mentality that need to buy in on. People are going to watch this film and take away all different sorts of ideas from it. And you need to learn to be okay with that. And look, I don't mean you as in you specifically. Maybe it's the guy next to you or the guy in back of you or your friend or your cousin or somebody else you know. Maybe it is you, though. Maybe you are one of those people who already know that they're just going to love this movie, having not seen one single frame of it. Or actually, not true. Having seen the trailers for it, but not the full film in all of its context. I'm not some sort of DC hater. I'm not some sort of Marvel sympathizer. Or the flip side, I'm not a Marvel hater or a DC sympathizer. I'm going into these films hoping that they are good and they entertain me and they keep me in the moment for every moment that I am watching them. And you need to do so as well. But you also need to be accepting of the idea that other people may not feel as strongly as you do, for better or worse, about that particular film. And you need to learn to accept it, be okay with it, and move on. And because as much as you're entitled to your opinion to like or not like this particular film, other people are entitled to that exact same opinion. And that's the way the world works. So next week, I'm not going to talk about it on this particular show. We have other means to be able to do it. So make sure you follow the YouTube page if you want a review right out of the gate once the embargo breaks on Tuesday. Or you stay tuned for the movie review podcast, which will get a little bit more in-depth next week as we full-blown review Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. But in the meantime, you prepare yourself for what's coming, because we made it this far. We're almost here. Get ready to enjoy it. And with that said, I'm going to get out of here. It's been a pleasure, and I thank you once again, as always, as I do every single week, for coming on board and making it all the way through and listening to this particular show. Whether you downloaded, you streamed it, however it is that you got it, thank you very much for listening. Look, be sure to follow all the social media accounts because there's lots of good information that we put out there that we wanted you to get a handle on. Follow us on Twitter, the official Just the Worst Podcast Twitter handle. That's at JTW Podcast. That'll let you know every single time a brand new episode is put up. It'll be brought right to you, so you keep an eye on that. Also, for the official Twitter handle for our mothership, This Is Infamous, that would be at Tis Infamous, so you make sure you follow that one as well. Right now, the site's going under reconstruction, so once it is fully built and restored, that's where you'll be notified that we are up and running once again. And you can follow me there and all of my ramblings, rantings, and musings at Infamous Kid. That's 2 D's at the end. So you make sure you follow me at Infamous Kid. Over on Facebook, facebook.com/justtheworstpodcast, facebook.com/tisinfamous, and facebook.com/BillyTheKid. I know those Facebook algorithms mess with your news feeds. Just, you gotta mess back in order to get all the notifications we put up there. But once again, lots of good information we put up there on the Facebook pages. Podcast can be found at soundcloud.com. That's soundcloud.com/justtheworstpodcast. Or if you have an Android or Apple device, you make sure that you download for yourself the SoundCloud app. Once you're a subscriber and you have the SoundCloud app on your phone or your tablet, you can get every single one of our shows and every single one of the episodes that go along with them right in the palm of your hands, or if you have a tablet, I guess 2 palms. So either way, you can take all of our shows on the go and listen to them wherever it is that you are. So the SoundCloud app or soundcloud.com/justtheworstpodcast. You can find all of my work on a regular basis at joeblow.com. This is Infamous, especially right now on our This Is Infamous YouTube channel, and right here at Just the Worst Podcast. I have been your host, Billy Donnelly. This has been Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 27. I'll be back next week, having seen Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. So just sit tight. It's coming for you to see as well. You have yourself a pleasant, immediate future. In the meantime, I'm out. Peace. Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 27, has been a presentation of Just the Worst Podcast Media, and this is Infamous.